Welcome to the Quiverful Adoptions podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Casey. We are two adoptive mamas who have walked in your shoes, so we get it.
We remember the crazy journey of adoption like it was yesterday, and we are so thankful we get to share some amazing stories with you right here from the living room of our office.
Well, actually, we're sitting in the bathroom, but the living room does sound better.
Anyway, none of that matters. We're glad you're here.
So grab a cup of coffee and join us as we dive right in.
Hey guys!
Hey friends! Today we're here with Amy Bagwell from @Toddler Adoption. Amy, we're so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks y'all. I'm excited.
Yeah, so why don't we start out by you just telling our listeners a little bit about your story, about who you are, that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, sure. So my husband Charlie and I, we are parents to a 2.5-year-old little girl. We adopted her when she was 17 months old. So we, when we first got married, really before we got married, we both knew that we always wanted to adopt, but weren't exactly sure when that would fall in the process. So like a lot of people, we experienced infertility, and after going through some treatments and honestly even having conversations with an expectant mom through all of that, we just realized, you know what, this is not the route we want to take. We feel like that our next step is adoption. So yeah, we looked around at agencies and different routes to go about it, and then for us, we landed on Quiverful.
Yay!
So here we are, yes.
Well, Amy, the primary reason why we brought you in today is because we saw on Instagram the other day where you posted about talking to your children about adoption. How did that post come to be?
Yeah, so every once in a while, I'll just kind of ask, my little toddler adoption community, what do you guys want to talk about? What questions do you have? And I got one question that asked, basically, how do you talk to your child about adoption or tell them that they were adopted? And it sparked a lot of conversation just amongst our little community on the best ways to go about that. And depending on your situation, I know that there's lots of different approaches, and that's perfectly fine. But it was a good conversation for us to have at the time.
Yeah. So I love the post. There's like a piece in that post that you talked about how it's not about telling them at one specific moment, but it's more an evolving conversation. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for us, again, we adopted our daughter Lee when she was 17 months old, and she's black and my husband and I are white. And so we never really even had the thought that she wouldn't know, because it's very clear it's not just her, but everyone in our community that she is adopted. So we talk pretty frequently just about when she joined our family, or, her first family, her first mom, or any siblings or anything like that. So it's just kind of become an evolving part of our conversation as we go.
Yeah, you can't really hide it, I don't guess.
Yeah, no.
So for the people that can hide it, what are some practical ways that they can bring up adoption with their children?
So I'll give you a few examples of what we do. And I don't know what's best, but I just know kind of what seems to have worked for us. We just use pretty average daily prompts or things that come up that remind us of her story and how she came to join our family. So a good example, the other day we were driving through the town where we went and met her and picked her up for the first time. And so just as we're driving through the town, we say, "Lee, this is the first time that Mommy and Daddy came to meet you and pick you up, and you joined our family and we drove home. And do you remember that?" Knowing that she probably didn't remember it, but it's just another part of having the regular conversation with her. Like probably 2 weeks ago, my husband Charlie was fixing her a glass of milk, and he was telling her how when she first joined our family, all she wanted to drink was milk. She would only ever drink milk, and we all kind of laughed about that. But just, regular conversation about it.
So, Elizabeth, what is a way that you bring up adoption with your children?
So one of the things that we do we've done since day one with both of the kids is we were, lucky enough to get a picture of both of their birth parents, both Grant and Ellie's birth moms, in the hospital. And so we've got a picture of them in each of their rooms. And so that way, I've seen like Grant just look at it from time to time. But Ellie's still a little young to do that, but we acknowledge it. You know, this was your first mom, and this, you know, you're adopted, so, you know, this is your first mom who carried you and placed you for adoption, and just like age-appropriate little tidbits that we've given them. You know, even most of the time it's just in our nighttime routine, you know, but they're at least exposed to those pictures anytime they want to look at them. So, and then, of course, like, as they get older, like, I've shown Grant more pictures since he's older and, like, can understand. So
I love that. One of the ways that Josh and I bring up adoption with our children is they are obsessed with the profile book that Crystal looked at when she chose us to adopt Ella May. And so the way that they found it was, I still had it in the back seat of my car, like in the little, what do you call that? Flap thing on the back of your car. And
the catch-all?
The catch-all, apparently, because it's been there for 5 years. So they found that, and they want me to go through that book with them. And, of course, that book is more about our family, but it opens up a good conversation to say, this is what your first mom looked at when she chose us to be your parents. And so it's just a really good conversation starter for us. And of course, there's more ways, but.
And I think, and Amy, you can agree or disagree, but I feel like this is something that will always feel awkward. Like, I want our listeners to be encouraged. If you haven't yet started this conversation with your child, or maybe you have and you're just looking for ideas on how to make it less awkward, I feel like it's always going to be one of those things that's going to feel a little awkward.
Yeah, and I don't know tell me your story with this, but for us, I realized that it definitely feels more awkward for Charlie and I than it does for Lee.
Absolutely.
She doesn't know that it's awkward or should be awkward because it's just her present reality.
Yeah.
So I can see how if you could hide the adoption, I guess, I can see how it will be hard to bring up the conversation because it does feel awkward. But it's probably going to be a lot more awkward if they get the Band-Aid ripped off at a later age of life.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's just like one of those things you just dive into. It's kind of like we all fear the sex talk with our kids. And this is like an ongoing sex talk, basically. Like, this is something that, like, they're going to have different questions and uncomfortable conversations that are just going to come up. But I think the point is, if it's always an ongoing conversation, then at least they're not going to feel awkward about it.
Yeah.
And it's totally okay if we feel awkward about it.
So I knew I was coming here today, obviously, so this was on my mind. But, like, this morning, Lee was going to the potty on her little training potty.
Yeah.
And when she first joined our family, her first mom sent home some of her things with her. And she had gotten her a brand new training potty, knowing that potty training time was coming soon. So this morning, she's sitting there. I said, do you know, Lee, that when you first joined our family, your first mommy bought you this potty and gave you this potty, and she sent it home with us to teach you how to learn how to potty train. And so just little things like that honestly, I don't know, it could have gone in one ear and out the other. But my thought is, if enough things go in that little ear, it's eventually going to stick, that she had a family before us and still has another family. She has 2 families.
Now the hope and prayer is that potty does not become her security blanket.
Yeah, well, she has a blanket too. So she has a blanket that came with her and a big Minnie Mouse that doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon either.
That's
so
awesome.
We'll see. Yeah,
much more convenient than
much more convenient than the potty.
Portable potty around.
Yes.
Your story matters. Creating your adoption profile book is one of the most important aspects of your adoption journey. It is the first and usually only opportunity for you to share your story with a potential expectant family, and Arrow and Root is here to help make that process as easy as possible. Having a professionally designed profile book that is expectant parent focused will help you stand out and bring you comfort in knowing your book communicates who you are as a family in the best way possible. Allow Arrow and Root to help you make a great and lasting first impression. It means everything.
So another thing, Amy, that you mentioned was that we need to try to stick to the facts and, like, don't try to put words in her mouth. I know there's temptation to where, in adoption world where you want to make it sound like a beautiful thing, or like your mother made a choice out of love. Your birth mother made a choice out of love, or, she I don't know, just but you're saying basically we need to try to stick to the facts. That's going to be the best way to convey their story.
Yes, something that I have felt convicted about is there are so many adoption stories out there, and if you're on social media, I know that you see all these adoption stories, and a lot of times it's easy to confuse what you want to be true with your current reality. And so something that Charlie and I have really agreed upon, I guess, and decided that we will always do is to tell Lee the truth. And what that means is the truth is going to come in phases. It wouldn't be kind of us to tell her the entire truth of her adoption story at age 2, but it would be unkind of us to never tell her that. However, I also don't know the truth of her story a lot because I'm not the one that made the decision to place her in our family. So in a lot of ways, it would be easy to make assumptions of why her first mom chose us or chose adoption for her path. But there's 2 things that I know are true because her first mom told me, and that is that she loves Lee and that it was the hardest decision of her entire life. And so those are the 2 things that I can tell Lee as far as when it comes to her first mom and what the decision was like for her. But other than that, I don't really know a lot. So I can only share, I guess, what I know, and I'm not going to share the things like, she loved you so much that she wanted us to be your family. And, but I don't want to put words in her mouth. And maybe one day they'll be able to have that conversation. I don't know.
And I think that's the biggest thing. It's not necessarily that it isn't true. It's just that you don't want to put words in her mouth. So we're not saying you're not telling her this was done out of love because it's not true.
Right. I'm sure that's true.
Yeah, but you just don't want to put those words in her mouth.
Exactly.
And when we start putting words in our children's birth parents' mouths, it can create confusion for the child. It can make them have these grandiose ideas of their birth family that aren't accurate depictions.
Right. Yeah, it's a hard balance for sure.
Absolutely.
So what are some good ways that we can talk to our children about maybe the fact that they weren't in our belly or that they have biological siblings? Do you have any advice on that?
I can tell you what I've done.
Okay.
So we're in the season right now where we are surrounded by pregnant bellies. I don't know about y'all, but it seems like so many people are having kids, and a lot of Lee's friends are having little siblings come along, which has been really fun. So she is really starting to notice baby bellies.
Yes.
So awkwardly, whether there's a baby in there or not, she thinks there's a baby in big bellies, which has been a fun conversation. So anyway, that has been an easy on-ramp for me lately in talking about there's a baby in there. Do you know that you were not in mommy's belly? Whose belly were you in? That's right. You were in your first mommy's belly. And we talk about her by name, but, maybe not appropriate for the podcast. But so we have that conversation with her pretty regularly now. Siblings, yes.
Yeah.
So Lee has that I'm aware of. She has 2 biological brothers. And one of them, specifically, her first mom shared some pictures with us recently of him. So it's been fun to share those with Lee and get to explain to her as much as she can understand that she has a new biological brother in the world and what he looks like and what his name is and they look alike. So that's been great and so kind of her first one to be able to share some of that with us to give us those talking points.
For sure. Yeah. It's really interesting too. My children, they have older siblings, and so we're able to meet up with them and go to dinner or have Christmas functions with them. They were adopted by my nursing professor from college. And so just to have that ongoing relationship and have a picture of their family that look identical to them in their room, that's just kind of neat to be able to share that part of their story with them.
Right. So, Amy, you have been doing toddler adoption at Toddler Adoption on Instagram for a while now. Can you talk to us, just explain kind of how that came to be?
Yes. Basically, I got tired of Googling all the things that I didn't know the answers to when it came to toddler adoption because, you guys know because you were there part of it with us. When we first entered the adoption process, we just kind of assumed it would be an infant or a younger baby because that's more common with domestic adoption. We were open to age 3 and under, I think we said, but hadn't really put a lot of thought into it. And so when Lee came along, I realized that, wow, I have a lot of educating myself to do. And there are really minimal resources on transitioning a toddler into your family, specifically domestically, and when they haven't come from like an orphanage background. So one day I was driving down, well, I was riding. I wasn't driving an Instagram. I was riding down the road with Charlie just talking about it. And I said, well, you know what? I bet other people have the same question. So I literally just made an account in the car, not really having thought that much about it. And the intent of it is to not share necessarily like the right way to go about things, because I'm very much still learning. Again, I said she's 2.5, so I'm in no way an expert. But I figure if I can create some conversation in the community of people that have been through it before, then hopefully we can all learn together and ask each other the questions that Google maybe doesn't have the best answers for. And yeah, here we are.
I love that. I think that as we develop as an adoption community, this is something that we're going to need more and more of. It's just like a space where we can all collaborate and share what works for our family, instead of this is the hard and fast right way to do it. Because we all know all of our adoption stories are so very different, and every adoptee and every first mother is completely different and unique. And so I love it. This is not this is how you should do it, but more an encouragement for conversation on, well, how did you guys do it? Well, how did you share your child's first mother's story with them well, or their adoption story with them well, and then collaborating and making it a conversation. I just love that.
Yeah. On the post that you mentioned, we got some good advice about books to read. I think that's huge as far as just talking to your child about being adopted. If you are having a hard time starting that conversation,
right,
just go to your library or Amazon and get some good books that talk about adoption. And I would be careful to not read them and just put the book away, because a lot of times they're not a full picture of your child's adoption. But it is a great way. We've experienced that for sure. That is a great way to at least start that conversation and be able to answer some unasked questions that she might have. But yes, that all comes through community and this person making this, suggestion or whatnot. Something someone else said, and we do the same thing, but I'm glad they brought it up, is that every night they pray for their child's birth family.
Yeah.
And pray for them by name. And it's just one way to keep that in front of your child and to know that we all want what's best for that family.
Yeah.
That we're all one family, that we're praying for each other regularly. So yeah, those were some good pieces of advice I felt like we got from other people in the community.
Yeah.
Why is the color yellow on toddler adoption?
Well, I don't have a great answer, but here's the truth. My personality, if y'all know me at all, is I really never wear color, okay? But
you're an 8.
I'm an 8. I'm an Enneagram 8. I wear black, tan, gray, cream, and occasionally like some colorful shoe or scarf, and that's about it. Like, literally, that's what I'm wearing. So, but Lee, now she will pop in some color because her skin is beautiful. She has lots of beautiful melanin and a good yellow or a pink on her. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
So I have been so much more conscious with her to like incorporate color into her life, in her room, in her wardrobe. So it just felt fitting to not go along with the typical social media black and white, even though that's my go-to anyways.
Right.
That was a little way to honor her.
I love it.
Yeah.
Just gives it some personality.
Yeah.
Well, a few weeks ago, we interviewed Brett Hurst over at Pace Recovery, and one of the things that he said is that in order to equip our children well is to make sure that they're surrounded by community, people that have walked in their shoes, that are adopted, that know what they're going through, that can relate to them on their level. So other children. And that's one of the things that Elizabeth and I have been very,
just mindful
of, and making sure that our children are hanging out with each other and that they're hanging out with other children that are adopted. What are some of the ways that you've made sure to bring community into Lee's life?
Yeah, that's huge. I'm glad you brought that up. So we are super blessed to have some great friends who not only have adopted, but their child is about the same age as Lee, and they are both black, and we're white, and their parents are white. So they have a very common, I guess they have a lot in common, with the transracial adoption and their age. So we try to keep those relationships going, whether it's just hanging out, texting, talking about one another, looking at social media. where it can almost normalize adoption to her and normalize what it's like to be part of a transracial family so that she doesn't feel like the oddball out.
Right.
So, yeah, we're pretty aware, like you said, mindful of involving people in our lives and in her life who are about her age who have been adopted, but also adults. If I know someone that's been adopted and we see them, or even on TV or something, we'll say, "Oh, did you know that they were adopted?"
Right. Yeah.
Which has been really fun to like celebrate it in a way.
Yeah. Grant, you go ahead. It's funny. Grant automatically assumes that all of his friends are adopted, and like he will we'll be sitting around a table with friends, and he'll point to the adults and the kids and say, "You're adopted, and you're adopted, and you're adopted." It's just so normal for him and I think that I'm thankful because I think that is in part to me being intentional with having friends and their kids be around him who are. But it's funny. He's only 4 right now.
Talking about the innocence of a child, Ayers came home from school the other day and said, "Mom, I have a cousin in my class." And I said, "No, you don't, Ayers. What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, Brandon's my cousin." And I said, "Brandon's not your cousin. I have no idea who Brandon is." He said, "Yeah, Mom, he's adopted." And I said, "Well, honey, just because he's adopted doesn't mean that he's your cousin." And he said, "Yeah, I guess you're right because I'm black and he's white." And I said, "Well, Ayers, you're not black. You're brown. You're not black." And so anyways, it's just been this evolving conversation of not everybody that's adopted is related to you, and
not everyone is adopted.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah,
That's funny.
I will say we have a dog, and not long after we adopted Lee, we realized that we would say that Hank, our dog, was adopted. And then we realized, you know what? We probably shouldn't be talking about our dog being adopted because it's definitely not the same thing.
No. Yeah.
So we've changed our language around and talking about, we rescued Hank.
Yes.
We didn't rescue you.
Right.
You didn't need rescuing. We adopted you. Very, very big difference.
I love
That's
that.
good. Yeah. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell everyone how they can follow you on Instagram and get in touch with you?
Yeah, at Toddler Adoption. Follow along. I'd love for you to go back and look at some old posts and just comment if you've got any questions or advice. Like I said, I really want it to be a communication community where we can have conversations and not just post and like things. But ask hard questions. Send me a message. I may or may not have an answer, but I'll try.
And even if you think of a topic that maybe isn't covered, I'm sure you would love that.
Yeah, I get that a lot. That's how this whole conversation came about. So for sure.
Yeah. Awesome.
Have you heard about the Promise Summit? If you are out there and you're listening right now and you are hoping to adopt, or you're an adoptive parent, or you're struggling with infertility, or maybe you feel called to adoption and you just have no clue where to start, then you need to be at the Promise Summit. Casey, tell us a little bit about what the Promise Summit is.
The Promise Summit is a Christian conference for couples considering adoption, in the wait of adoption, and or families who have adopted. This event is packed with powerful speakers, incredible worship, and a panel that represents all members of the adoption triad, and is sure to be a weekend that you will never forget. Our hope is that you leave the Promise Summit forever changed and armed with the promises from God that will encourage you throughout your entire adoption journey.
The Promise Summit will be held May 3rd and 4th in Greenville, South Carolina, and we would love to meet you there. You can find out more information at thepromisesummit.com or on Instagram at thepromisesummit.